Welcome to a video taking a look at plotting quadratic graphs. Here we're asked to complete the table of values for y equals x squared minus 4x plus 1. Now the very first thing that we need to recognise here when we're given a question like this is we need to work out whether it is a straight line graph or whether it's going to be a curved graph. Now the way that we can find out whether it's going to be a straight line graph or a curved graph on our GCSE exam is by looking to see whether there is an x squared in the equation that we're given. So we're given the equation y equals x squared minus 4x plus 1. There is an x squared here, so that means that it's going to give us a U-shaped graph. Now this is important for a couple of reasons. The first being that if it is a U-shaped graph, we're not going to connect our points with a ruler. We're going to simply draw a curve through each of our plotted points. The second thing is that it helps us to plot our points here. Now the reason for that is that a U-shape has got a line of symmetry, and so we can see here that a U-shape has got a line of symmetry that goes through there. Now this is very helpful to us in kind of figuring out the values that need to go in our table. So we can see here that we're missing some values. The U-shape helps us, and the idea that there's going to be some level of symmetry here helps us to figure out what some of the more difficult ones will be. Okay, so let's go about starting to complete this table. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start with the positive numbers. So start with the positive numbers simply because they're a little bit easier to work out. So we're going to start with the number 4 first. So for 4, we're simply going to take 4 and substitute it into x squared minus 4x plus 1. So for 4, that's going to become, instead of having my x squared, it's going to be 4 squared minus, and then I've got this 4x, so that means 4 lots of x, so minus 4 lots of x, 4 times x, so minus 4 lots of 4, and then lastly just plus 1. So let's calculate what this will be. 4 squared gives us 16, minus 4 times 4, well, that is 16, and then plus 1, that gives us a final answer, 16 minus 16, 0, plus 1 of 1. So we'll put that 1 into our table, and then let's do the same thing this time with our 2. So all we're doing now is exactly the same as what we did up here. This time we're doing it with the number 2. So substituting 2 into this equation, so it becomes 2 squared. So just replacing the x's with the number 2, minus, and then it's 4x, so 4 lots of our x. Our x for this one is going to be 2, so 4 lots of 2. Oh, it's supposed to be a 2. And then plus 1. So let's work this out. 2 squared, 2 times 2 gives us 4, minus 4 times 2, that gives us 8, then add 1. So 4 minus 8. 4 minus 8 gives us negative 4. Then add 1 onto negative 4. That takes us up to negative 3. So my value in this one here is going to be negative 3. Now, at this point, I need to start thinking again. It's a good idea to start thinking again about this idea of symmetry. So we've got a bit of symmetry in this graph because we've got this x squared, it's going to be a U-shaped graph. Now what I should be able to see is that I've got 1 minus 2 minus 3 minus 2, 1. What I can say is that I've got a little bit of symmetry here. I could say that I've got symmetry through this point. You can see that the numbers here, minus 2, 1, 1. So, without actually having to do any calculation, I can say that this point here is simply going to be 6. Now this won't work for all types of graph like this. Sometimes you may find that this is not going to work for you. However, it is a nice little trick that if you do spot it, it just saves you having to calculate with any negatives for this graph, because the negatives are where people start to make mistakes. Okay, so now we've found our coordinates. All that we then need to do is simply plot these coordinates onto our graph. So let's do that. Let's start with negative 1, 6. So negative 1 on the x-axis, 6 on the y-axis. 0, 1. Going to have a point there. 1 minus 2. So 1 minus 2. Then 2 minus 3. 3 minus 2. 4, 1. And 5, 6. Okay, so as you can see, we've got this kind of U-shaped graph. We then just connect each of these points with a curved line and try to be as accurate as possible here. Hopefully you'll be a little bit neater than I am. Remember that because it is a U-shaped graph, we're not connecting these points with a ruler, and that would be our final answer there. As you can see, going back to this idea here, we've got that level of symmetry just running through the middle of our shape. Okay, let's take a look at a second example. So here we've got x squared plus x minus 2. So let's start again with our positive numbers, and hopefully we can figure out what the rest of our shape will be. So starting with, we'll start with 1. So starting with 1, we're just taking that 1 and substituting it into our equation x squared plus x minus 2. So we've got 1 squared plus, and then we've just got this plus x, so it's just plus 1 minus 2. So 1 squared, that gives us 1, plus 1 minus 2, that's going to give us an answer of 0. So our first one here is giving us an answer of 0. Then let's do the same thing with the next number along. So let's use 0 and put 0 into our formula. So we get 0 squared plus 0 minus 2. And we can see straight away that's quite straightforward. That's just going to give us an answer of negative 2. So we get minus 2 here. Then hopefully again we can see that we've got a little bit of symmetry here. We can see that we've got this symmetry going down this point here. So again, because we've got this x squared graph, because we've got a graph that involves x squared, we know that we get a U-shaped graph, we get that symmetry. That helps us sometimes, not always, to find other points without having to calculate with them. So what we can do is we can say I've got negative 2, 0, 0, I've got a 4 here, so that one there is going to be a 4. From this point I can then simply plot the points on my graph. So negative 4, 10, it's going to be up here, negative 3, negative 3, 4, that's going to be there. I've got negative 2, 0, and then I've got negative 1, negative 2, then I've got 0, negative 2, then I've got 1, 0, and then I've got 2, 4. Then last thing to do is simply connect these points with a curved line, and then that would be my final answer for plotting the quadratic graph for y equals x squared plus x minus 2.